Welcome to the fourth episode of SteeleWatching. This is the episode Signed, Steeled, and Delivered. My name is Eric.
I'm Sara.
And we're your hosts.
You're stuck with us.
Yes, you're stuck with us. You know, in the last episode, let me knock a couple of things out of the way first before we get into the episode.
Sure.
During the last episode, we kind of got off onto a little bit of a tangent, and we talked about a couple of movies that had nothing to do with Remington and Steele directly, other than it came up in the conversation. And that was Christine, which you mentioned, and Duel, which I mentioned. And I could not remember who the primary actor in that was. And I just remembered it this morning. It was Dennis Weaver. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, yes, that was one of the very early Steven Spielberg movies.
Oh, that's right.
So, having mentioned that movie and Christine, I think we ought to include those in the Amazon clickbait that we put on our official website, so that if somebody wants to go and buy those movies because we mentioned them, of course, everybody would want to go buy them just because we mentioned them, right?
Of course.
Yeah. So if they want to do that,
exactly,
they can go to the website and they can buy those movies from Amazon Canada, Amazon US, and help the podcast by letting us get a commission on that sale. Okay, commercial then.
Also kind of tangentially related is that there is a actor who appeared in a couple of episodes that we have yet to talk about of Remington Steele, named David Warner, who passed away recently, like 2 days ago, 3 days ago, something like that. As of the date
of this recording.
Yeah.
Because if somebody's listening to this 2 years from now, they're going to scratch their head and say, what?
So, it was July 24th that he passed away at the age of 80.
2022.
2022. And, he appeared in again, like I said, we haven't seen those episodes yet, but he appeared in a couple of episodes of the show, as well as a number of movies. Too numerous to name all the movies, but mainly I know him from Star Trek. So R.I.P. David Warner, who just had like one incredible list of accomplishments. So
good. Thank you for that. So now that we've got all the preliminaries out of the way, yay, let's get into the episode.
Absolutely.
I liked your idea that you did in the last episode of going to Judith Moose's book for the summary.
Yay.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, I'll just mention for anybody that might be listening that doesn't have that book, it is available to be bought. You're not going to like the price. I've seen it for like $100, but it's a good book.
It's expensive.
It's a good book. Now, I do know that Judith had sold Adobe PDF Acrobat versions of the book at one time. I don't know if they're still available or what the price was, but you might be able to get it that way. That would definitely be a lot less expensive. But regardless, we're going to give Judith her due because we are going to be stealing from her book. So
stealing.
Here we go. Like I said, I liked your idea. And so I went to her book and I looked at the TV guide listing and I was underwhelmed. I mean, it was pathetic. Can we say that about TV guide? Yes,
sure.
It was pathetic.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I decided to go with one of the other synopses that she had there, and which was the original production synopsis.
Oh, nice.
Yes. It's a little more detailed. A CIA agent marked for murder seeks the aid of Remington and Laura. Desperate for help, fugitive Sheldon Quarry turns to Remington, claiming that his own agency, the CIA, has targeted him for death on the eve of his wedding. When Laura tries to get word to the fiancé that he is safe, Quarry's life becomes even more endangered. Somebody doesn't want him to get married, apparently. That opening scene with him and the hair dye. Oh, first of all, that color, I don't
some
really.
questions. I have some questions.
Yeah,
I'll let you go first, but I have some questions.
I don't know. I don't know really how well or in what way hair dye works. So I don't know if that color that we see there would be normal for a natural looking hair color if you were to dye it. But it sure looked an awful lot like blood. And I can't imagine somebody dyeing their hair blood red. That, especially if they're trying to
avoid being seen.
Blend in with the crowd, not be readily identified.
So to answer some of those, because I have dyed my hair on a number of occasions.
Okay.
You do often find that the dye is far darker or a far different color than the actual color that your hair ends up being.
Okay.
So the blood red makes sense if you're going for something that would have red highlights. So given that his hair color was, dark, he would have, if he left it in there and did it properly, it would come out sort of a reddish auburn.
Okay.
And so that makes sense. But what doesn't make sense to me is that he's got this, he's obviously using that so that it looks like blood. I don't think his intention was ever to actually dye his hair. I think he was just trying to make himself look as if he was covered in blood to, stage his death. I'm not even sure. Because you wouldn't put that much dye all over the room, all over your body, all over your head, unless you were just really, really bad at it. And then it doesn't change his hair color at all when he washes it out.
Well, I'm going to say he was really, really bad at it because he's a geek.
That's fair.
Which, if somebody's listening and they're a geek, I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend you, but
I'm a geek.
Geeks are not necessarily renowned for their, how shall we say it, ability to do practical things.
Fair enough.
Dye your hair.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why they're geeks. They specialize in other things. So, yeah, it just was.
It didn't change. His hair color stayed the same.
Well,
that's what gets me.
Well, maybe in his mind it was different. I don't know. But why would he try? I mean, it's not like he was trying to fake his own death, though. So
I always got that impression that he was trying to look as if they had already done their job and therefore would stop coming after him.
That's a possibility, but if he's...
But then the maid walks in and he's like, it's okay, it's hair dye, and then he runs off.
Yeah. But he's still obviously intending to get married, so I'm not sure how
True.
Pretending to be dead and then showing up at your own wedding would accomplish anything. But okay.
Well, he's not all that bright. He kind of establishes that a few times in the episode.
Well, he's not necessarily bright. Well, I don't know. He's certainly got the ability to retain information. Let's put it that way, because True. He is the answer man.
Yeah. He's the human version of Google.
Yes, or Encyclopedia Britannica. Yeah. Now, when he takes off after the maid comes in and he sees her, or she sees him and he takes off, the blonde, what was she thinking? I mean, they're stopped at road construction. Yeah. There are people there. There are people who can identify her there. And then she's going to shoot him in front of them? What's with that?
Also not very bright.
No.
Both of them, not very bright.
No. Although you'd think a paid assassin would be somewhat intelligent. I mean, at least about their job.
You would, yeah, I thought that too, because again, he's seen her face. He can identify her. And she's in the house later on posing as a nurse. Mm-hmm. It's a good thing he didn't go to the house, because he'd just be like, hey, she tried to kill me.
Yeah.
She had a gun.
Well, it's a good thing. Yeah. It's a good thing he went hunting for help instead of going to the house to meet the fiancé.
Yeah.
In the office, Murphy is talking to Laura because she's there pouring over paperwork. And she turns him down on the trip. And he says, if I had known you for so long and didn't like you so much, he doesn't put it in those terms. He uses a
Yeah.
kind of the generic. If a guy hadn't known you for so long and didn't like you so much and wasn't sure that you would never lie to him, he could convince himself you didn't want to go. And then as he leaves, she almost has second thoughts. Or it looks like she almost has second thoughts. Was it just that she thought the idea of getting out of the office and going golfing was something that would appeal to her? Because we know she golfs. We learn this later on in the show. Or is it that she's wishing she could go with Murphy? Does she have any kind of feeling there for Murphy? Or is it just, yeah, it sure would be nice to get away for the weekend?
Yeah, I don't think it's Murphy necessarily. I mean, obviously she likes him. She's his friend.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right. I think it's more of it would be nice to get away for the weekend.
With a friend.
Sure, I'll go golfing but with a friend. Yeah. What I'm wondering is, she's doing all the taxes. Why doesn't Murphy offer to help and then speed up the work and then they could both go? Also, is this the tax return that they screw up that brings Mildred in later?
I don't know. That could be. That's a good question. I mean, that would be about the right
wondering
timing.
Where his tax return is, right?
Yeah,
So
that would be about the right timing.
This is it.
We have found the tax return.
She got distracted and she didn't file Remington's tax return.
That's right, because she was thinking about going golfing.
Yeah.
We've solved it, everybody.
There it is. You're welcome.
Yeah. Bernice and Steele.
Wow, I love this scene.
I thought the party was over for her.
But she's not partying. She's not going clubbing.
Well, that's true, but she does say that, at 6:00, the office doors are going to open. They're going to empty out. Everybody's going to head to the bars and the restaurants on the ground floors. They're going to hook up, buy each other drinks, tell each other lies, hope the spell doesn't break before dinner, and if you get lucky, it lasts until Monday. That sounds like she's still doing a little party type thing.
I wouldn't call this a party. I would actually call this very sad. It feels to me that she knows the party's over, because parties are fun. You go out, you party, you hook up, you enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
It almost feels like she doesn't enjoy it, but she doesn't know how to go through any other ritual to meet people. So she does it knowing that it's not going anywhere, but there's no other way for her to interact that she knows of anyway. So she kind of just goes through the motions.
Falls back into the old habit.
Yeah, it feels very empty though. It doesn't feel to me that she's enjoying it.
Okay. It just kind of came across to me that she was kind of looking forward to it, but maybe she wasn't.
I think she's looking forward to the idea that it could be different at some point, that she could go down there and maybe the spell will last this time. Maybe she'll meet somebody this time. But it doesn't. So it kind of becomes this odd, empty ritual.
Okay. What about the last minute date? If somebody came into your office, let's assume that you were single, or back when you were single and weren't necessarily dating anybody. If somebody had come into your office at, what would it have been, about 4:30 maybe on a Friday and invited you out on a date, what would you think?
So I have a couple of questions. First of all, Gail has the croup. I call bullcrap. Because she is standing him up, because as a child who almost died from croup on a number of occasions, it is a primarily childhood illness. Adults can get it, but it's extremely rare. It affects boys more than girls. And it's not. Hey, I'm just telling you how it is. But I don't think if she was really sick, I doubt it would be croup. I think that sounded to me like an excuse.
Okay.
So Gail stood him up. I'm just saying. I don't know Gail. I don't know her reasons. She didn't want to go.
Well, Laura does seem to be a little bit pleased that he's asking her out.
She's interested at first, for sure. She kind of turns around, she smiles, she's flirty.
I thought they were going to keep it professional.
Yeah, I think so. I was going to ask you this because you'd probably know. Was this one that was made at a later date and then shifted over to an earlier airing? Because I asked this because it feels like throughout the entire episode that they have more of an established partnership. She doesn't even think to call Murphy when Sheldon shows up and he's all covered in blood and the CIA's after him. It just feels weird that she wouldn't call him. Like, Murphy's not unreachable. He's golfing. Mm-hmm. She could call his golf club, his golf course, whatever, and say, hey, could you get Murphy Michaels? We've got a situation here. In the episode right before it, Steele stumbled onto a case and she kind of tried to get rid of him because she didn't think he was capable of helping her. And now they go through this whole weekend without even contacting Murphy. Mm-hmm. So it feels to me that there are elements here that feel like they should have been later on. And this flirting with him is one of them.
Yeah.
Because you're right. She said she wanted to keep it professional.
Signed, Steele, and delivered. Production code is 2702. So if we use the production codes as a guide, and I think that primarily they probably do follow pretty closely. There are maybe some changes due to production issues or such, but barring the unexpected situation, I think the production codes can be generally relied on. Signed, Steeled, and delivered was a production code 2702, which would have made it one of the first regular episodes that they did, because license to Steal was 2704.
Right.
Which was the premiere episode. Yeah, that's weird. I don't know.
So then it just becomes a question of what was she thinking? Because A, why didn't she call Murphy and introduce and interrupt his golfing weekend? And B, you're right. She said she wanted to keep it professional. So far, they've, aside from the kiss in Still Waters, but again, we established she has plausible deniability for that. We were posing.
Yes.
It wasn't real.
Yes. We're proving a lot of stuff in this podcast, aren't we? Yeah.
So I think you're right. It's an interesting, I wonder if she was just looking for him to approach it in the way that would make her feel comfortable. Because his first overture to her was, let's hop in the sack. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how she translated it. But now he's going through the motions of asking her out on a date. That's different. That says, if I want to date you, I'm not interested in just sleeping with you. I want to get to know you. I want to go through that process. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm going to stick around. And then, of course, the date is that night.
Yeah. When she realizes that he's
last minute.
She is his backup plan. Mm-hmm. And not even necessarily planned backup plan, just kind of a...
No, she was just there.
Yeah. Okay. You fit the suit.
She fits the suit.
Yeah. We used that before, and that's a Brady Bunch reference for anybody that doesn't get it. Go back, check out the Brady Bunch. Yeah. You'll find it. Yeah. Oh, she's not happy, is she?
No, she is not. And I cannot blame her, because you asked if it were me, what my reaction would be. My reaction would be, nope, sorry, busy.
Yeah. And she says, I've already got a date. Does he believe her?
I don't think so.
Yeah. And that was because she seemed too interested. Well, he didn't specify when he first approached her. So
no,
I guess she still has plausible deniability. I guess she still has plausible.
Words are hard.
Yes, I know. I guess she still has plausible deniability, because she could say, well, I had a date for tonight, or I have a date for tonight, and you didn't specify when. So
exactly.
Okay.
But I don't think he assumes that she gets out much.
You don't think you think he assumes that she doesn't have much of a social life?
I think so, because when he finds the men's clothing in her house, he's shocked.
Well, he's even more shocked that it's a white belt. and a T-shirt that says "Bankers do it with interest."
Am I disappointed?
Yeah. But if he is as much of a ladies' man as he seems to be, he should know better than to ask somebody at 4:30 on a Friday night to go out that night.
Well, and then he starts going through his phone book and asking every woman he's ever presumably dated to come on this date. He's got tickets to some pretty high-end things, though, so I can sort of understand him wanting to fill the spot.
Yeah.
It was like a ballet or something they were going to, wasn't it?
It was at Bolshoi, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, which was a big thing back then.
So he would have been losing a lot of money. Probably the agency's money, but losing a lot of money.
Yeah, a lot of the agency's money.
His salary.
Yes. And then, of course, Sheldon comes in and grabs the coat rack.
I love this scene.
Why did he grab the coat rack, and why did he swing it at Steele if he's there to ask Steele for his help?
I wondered this too. And his comment of, I'd ask you to take a seat, but you've already helped yourself to some furniture is one of my favorites.
That's a good line. Yeah, that is.
But yeah, I don't know why he would do that.
It just doesn't seem to be the kind of approach that you would take to solicit somebody's help.
But neither did Albie's kidnap method, so maybe people are just terrible at asking for help.
Yeah.
At least he wasn't abducted.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's getting better.
Okay, next they are showing up at Laura's house.
Yep.
And, of course, there's the comment about the famous ex-CIA agent Remington Steele and vague references to secret missions and gop about government service. Isn't that a little bit over the top? I mean,
it's very over the top. Yeah.
It's either, I don't know. It's either so ridiculous that no reasonable person would believe it, or it's so ridiculous that no reasonable person would believe it's a lie. And I'm not sure which, but this is the same type of, same type of lie or same type of story or line that Remington Steele used at the polo match, about how Charles and I used to play whenever I was in London.
He's married now.
Yeah. I mean, it's so over the top that it's almost too much to believe it's a lie. But and again, like you pointed out, Laura is as much a con person. I was going to say con man, but she's a woman. She's a con woman as Steele is.
Con
just in a different way.
And we've got a reference here, an explicit one to Goldfinger. So we've got Goldfinger, Sean Connery, Honor Black Men, United Artists, 1964.
Yeah, I was going to come up. The line about
big fat guys with hats they throw at your neck.
Yeah.
Or bombs. And,
Goldfinger. I need to write that down at the end. See.
Yeah. Big fat guys with deadly hats they throw at your neck. That's what he said.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, it was Goldfinger that was the first Bond film Pierce Brosnan ever saw.
Isn't it really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, he talks about being taken to see it as a kid and how it ignited his love of the series, which of course he then became one of James Bond's, one of the Bonds. I think Steele is kind of unnerved by the idea that he's now a target by the CIA, or he could be a target basically because of what Laura has invented about him. And he trusts her to get him out of it, which is kind of interesting.
Now that you mention it, it's kind of funny because when Sheldon Quarry walked into Steele's office, he was kind of a little bit off the deep end, obviously. Grab a coat rack and swing it at somebody. And Steele was kind of more calm about it. But now Steele's going off the deep end and Sheldon's getting a little more calm.
Well, because of course he's found his hero.
Yeah,
he's found Remington Steele, the intrepid Remington Steele, who can definitely fix everything. Mm-hmm. And Steele is freaking out because he's not Remington Steele. He's not this CIA. He doesn't have any government service. This is all a load of crap.
Yeah.
He's not even qualified. Laura's qualified. He goes to her house. That's the first thing he does is he goes to her for help.
In this whole sequence, there's that bit in the kitchen where he's talking about what's happened to him.
Yeah.
And, he's talking about his wedding rehearsal and Lucille not knowing where he's at, and how one of his ushers, Larry Palmieri, or Lenny Palmieri, was blown up. And he describes the body and the smell and all this. I've got to say,
that actor is amazing.
Yes. Thank you. Tom Bray. I first saw him. First of all, let me say, I'm not a person who obsesses over actors. So, if I see an actor in a show that I really like, I don't say, well, I really love this show and this actor was in it, so I'm going to go watch everything they've ever done. I don't do that, but I have seen him in a few things. And he's always good. He started out, I think his first job was the TV series Breaking Away, which that TV show was so misused, so abused, because it was really a good series, but it didn't last very long. But he was excellent in that. And this scene, if this scene is not in his demo reel,
right,
there's something wrong, because it is just so perfect. He's got that perfect balance of not quite horror, but just kind of this shock and detachment that you can just imagine he's dealing with the shock by detaching himself from the events. Yep. And some other actor would have just gone over the top with this.
Yeah, but this is a very quiet intensity. It's a disassociation that like you said, he's detaching himself, but it's very, you can see the trauma. It's written all over him.
Yes.
It's brilliant. It's a really brilliant scene in like a show that's otherwise maybe not quite so heavy on certain things, like the trauma that a character experienced. Like the episode before this, poor Arnok, had dead bodies dropped all over him. And, it was played for comedy. It was played for laughs. And It was funny. It was, it was quite funny. But this time it's not funny. He describes, as you said, this usher getting hit by the car and his body flying up in the air and just being, there's horror in his face and there's all this emotion, but you're right. He didn't go over the top with it. He didn't turn it into like, a Shakespearean recital. It was just very quiet, very honest, very simple.
Yeah.
And beautiful.
Yes. Yes. So I'm sure he'll never hear this podcast, but Tom, hats off to you, man. That was a great scene.
It really was.
Now, kind of later in that same sequence of events, although in the show, there's a intermission of activities there. He comes out after having taken the shower and he's, wearing men's clothes that he found in Laura's closet. Yep. And of course, this is where Steele is, you found men's clothes in Laura's closet? And he says that it must be great being Remington Steele. I've wanted to be like you all my life.
Relax, Sheldon. Remember, you're only wearing a towel.
That is another great line right there. And that is very, very risque, I think, for the time.
It was. I didn't get it I was a teenager when I first watched this show. I was probably a pretty naive teenager because I did not get that line. I thought he was just, I don't know, maybe the towel might fall off. I didn't understand. I get it now.
My first question is, I guess Sheldon has to be talking hyperbolically because he couldn't have wanted to have been like Remington Steele all his life, because Remington Steele as a creation of Laura isn't that old.
Right.
I mean, Laura can't be that much older than Sheldon, or maybe even a similar age. So,
well, I know Stephanie was only 26 or so when the series started, but she plays herself as older. She feels older because of how she carries herself and how she behaves. So when I first saw it, I was assuming she was supposed to be more late 20s, early 30s.
Which would mean that if she had started as a detective and started the Remington Steele agency as her first job, let's say when she was 18, that means in theory, Remington Steele would only have been known about for 12 years maximum. And it's got to be less than that because she was at Havenhurst.
Yeah.
you know, and all
And
that. So
she has a math scholarship. She has a math degree too.
that's right. She went to college.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Sheldon is just.
I think it's the idea
Yeah.
of the hero that is, you know, courageous and brave and does all the things that you're supposed to do in the CAA. He's the guy behind the computer that, you know, finds all the answers to crop questions and whatever else. It's not terribly exciting, and he wanted to be exciting. My question is, how, this is sort of slightly off topic, well, not off topic, but just kind of veering away from it a little bit. How long has it been since she broke up with Wilson? Because she's still got his clothing there.
Mm-hmm.
That to me seems, you know, if it's been a while, that's an odd thing to keep the clothes around. I don't, now granted, I've never broken up with somebody I lived with, but I know friends that have, and usually they either return it or get rid of it fairly quickly because it reminds you of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like she had them hidden away. They were visibly in her closet because otherwise that would mean Sheldon was digging through her stuff. So I'm assuming the relationship hasn't long been over. Maybe that's why Murphy hasn't made his move. I don't know.
Could be. But, you know, you're talking about that, and Sheldon does kind of refer to that when he says there's no parade, no ticker tape, and you finally realize that you're just not cut from that particular bolt of cloth. And then Steele, you know, gives this speech, and it's interesting because that speech is contrary to what you perceive to be his character, or at least the character that he presents for himself, because it's very much I don't want to say it's emotional in the sense that it's you know, over the top, but it is a deep, heartfelt statement. Or is he just a good actor?
No, I think this one is heartfelt, and I think that this has actually been. I think there's evidence of this earlier in the episode too, because, you know, his date cancels on him, and I still maintain that she stood him up, but she cancels on him, and he is frantically going through his little black book, whatever you want to call it, or trying to get Laura to go with him. And you could read it as, yeah, he's got these tickets, he needs to fill the spot, or you could read it as, this is a person who's lonely, who is trying to find any way he can to connect with somebody, even if it's just for a night, who is not sure how to connect with people because he's never, you know, had to do anything real. He's never had to maintain anything that is solid or genuine. And you sort of see a bit of that in that episode where I think it was Tempered Stale, where he's at the restaurant with we talked about the brass nameplates and him saying to the maitre d', if I give one to Laura, it might be the last one I give out. So you kind of get the impression that he does want those things. He just doesn't know how to get them. And for him, they're as unattainable as Sheldon's desire to be this big hero that gets the ticker tape and does all the action sequences. And it's funny because they're both pretending and don't realize it. Sheldon is pretending to be this CAA guy, or he wants to be the CAA guy, and Steele is obviously pretending to be anything but what he is because he doesn't know.
I wonder, is it just that Steele doesn't know how to go about getting it, at least in this particular case, at least with Laura?
Right.
Because she's different than, you know, pretty much anybody he's encountered before, because as she said, I'm probably the first one who's never tumbled right into bed with him. But is it that he just doesn't know how to get it, or that he is afraid of the risk involved, the risk of failing to get it, the risk of maybe succeeding at getting it, and then suddenly it's not what he wants, or that he gets it and then it falls apart?
I think putting into context what we know about him later on, that he's never had a stable home life, that he's never had people that he can rely on for any length of time. His parent figures were inconsistent. Love was withheld or conditional upon certain behaviors. He was supposed to, he was, something that they used to get the government to give them money for one more dependent. He was never meant as somebody that was getting affection. So I think he's scared of succeeding because he doesn't know what a successful family looks like. He doesn't know what two parents that care for their children look like because he's never had that. He doesn't know how to maintain a connection because he's never had that. And he's never stayed in one spot long enough to try to do that. So it's easy for him to get women. He just has to smile and say the right things, and he knows the speech, but he doesn't know how to connect with them on a level beyond, what he's had to do. Yeah, superficial all his life. And he's always gotten these superficial women as a result. So Laura is not superficial. Laura is demanding more from him than what he is used to having to do. I.e., I ask you out on a Friday night at 4:30 and
you're supposed to just...
I'm handsome and you're just going to go. Laura says, no, you need to put in the work. He doesn't know how to put in the work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a risk. I'm sure it's frightening for him.
Connecting with someone is always a risk, but I think it's an extra risk when you've never done it before. And if you fail, it might feel like that's the only chance he'll ever have. If I fail, that's it. That's never going to happen again. Or I don't know how to trust that the other person is not lying to me because that's all he's ever had happen.
That's all he's ever done.
Yeah, he operates with lies all the time, and so therefore being truthful is probably terrifying. Picking out the sensible car is probably terrifying.
And then, of course, after his speech, he realizes that Sheldon's fallen asleep, and he says, if I'm nice enough to say all this sugary slop, the least you can do is stay awake. And it comes off as being snarky, but there's also that underlying sense of sincerity and, again, back to I revealed my secret and it didn't work out because he wasn't even listening.
Yeah. We'll notice that going forward, whenever he does have those moments of sincerity, it's always with someone who is not directly permanently connected to Laura or the agency. So he says it to Sheldon. Sheldon's a client. And it's unlikely that Sheldon's going to relay that information to Laura.
Yeah, that's
true. He reveals himself to the underdogs, the people that he feels that he identifies with. He identifies with Sheldon because Sheldon feels like a fraud, and he feels like a fraud. He identifies with Albie, I think, he doesn't know he's a fraud at the time, but Albie comes asking for help, saying, we're in over our heads, we don't know what to do. He feels like he's in over his head as Remington Steele all the time. So he continues to identify with these people that are seemingly nothing like him, but I think are very much like him in ways that he sees maybe, and that's why he talks to Sheldon as opposed to Laura. He doesn't tell Laura he wants the sensible car and the white picket fence because that's terrifying. She might take him up on the offer.
Yeah.
Maybe Sheldon would too. He was only wearing a towel.
No, but that makes me think what you just said here is that him revealing things to people who won't repeat it back to him or won't tell somebody is a little bit like somebody who, when people are intoxicated, they let their guard down.
Yep.
And they're likely to say something that they wouldn't say otherwise, and so they have these feelings towards somebody and they just can't, they're scared to death to say anything because of the fear of rejection or humiliation, being laughed at. But when they're intoxicated, they can say it and they can blame it on the alcohol. They can say, well, I was drunk.
Plausible deniability.
There we go. Hey, maybe that should be our catchfriage for this podcast.
It's right? Plausible deniability.
SteeleWatching. Plausible deniability. I can't talk today.
That's the soundbite right there.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's what you said there kind of reminded me of that is because that's what I think some people do is they hold things until they have that plausible deniability. I was drunk. Oh, I was just trying to tell Sheldon something that would make him feel better. I wasn't being honest. It was just a story.
In vino veritas, in wine there is truth.
Yes. Also hangovers, but
yeah. But I think you're right. It's a good way to protect himself by saying, oh, if it does get back to Laura, oh, I was spinning a yarn, kind of like me and Charles playing polo.
So after Laura goes through her little escapade at the grocery store and she flirts with that guy so easily, doesn't she? Makes you wonder about her. Maybe she's more of the party girl than Bernice thinks she is, because she had no problem flirting with him.
None whatsoever. And she picked him out. It was like a mark. Like, I know what this guy is going to go for. I know exactly what to say. It was kind of how Steele does it.
Yes.
He flashes a smile. He does the...
Yes.
I have a couple of questions about the scene at the house, though. They never say why Lucille needs a nurse, first of all. What does she have? What is she sick with? The dad implies she should be resting. The nurse is on hand in that, little uniform, and obviously it's the same woman that shot at Sheldon, but she gives her a shot. A shot of what? We never find out what that's for, other than the dad infantilizing his daughter who's about to get married. Does she have lupus? Is it, is this like an episode of House? Like, what's going on? It's never lupus, but what's happening with this woman? What does she have? Is it the croup?
Yeah, it's the croup. Everybody's got the croup.
Inquiring minds want to know why she's got a nurse living in the house or at least working there all hours.
Yeah, my thought was that her dad is just one of those people where everybody's sick. Everybody needs a nurse to take care of them. They all need vitamin shots. They all need things to calm them down. Let's medicate everybody because they're just...
Sort of like Munchausen syndrome?
A little bit, yeah. But not quite. It's almost I don't know. It's like the overprotective granny that says,
fair enough.
Dear, you need to take care of yourself. Oh, here, take this. This will help you. And they see a health problem in everything. And it's not that they're hypochondriacs or for themselves or have Munchausen's for based on others. It's just that they see a problem in everything and they need to take care of everybody. It's a kind of a power thing.
Well, that definitely fits with who he is and his power dynamic. And with the supermarket, that car chase scene was really weird. Are we seeing the same rear view mirror that she's seeing? Because if so, she needs to wash that thing. and also, how did she know it was the same car? It was literally just headlights. Well, it could have been any car. It could have been... That was it was really suspenseful, and I liked how it was done, but it was funny because every time she looked in the mirror and just saw these really fuzzy headlights, I kept thinking, you need to wipe that thing down because you can't see a darn thing, lady. That you're on a street. And then she gets to the supermarket and she runs around putting stuff in the cart. Why not just go to the cashier and ask them to call the police? Instead she picks up some dude and goes with him home in his car.
I don't know.
And I would love to have seen the conversation that she had to get rid of him.
Oh.
How did she...
Is his name Marnock, by any chance?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that would have been another conversation. I don't know. It would have made more sense to just go phone for help. But on the other hand, if she's thinking that...
Or phone Fred. What's Fred doing?
Yeah.
Get him out there.
The possibility that Sheldon is in trouble and calling the cops might create more of a problem, and that they can take care of it themselves better. That's the only thing I can think of that might be in her reasoning there. And maybe this was Fred's night
call
off.
Fred or... Yeah, maybe.
Because they had to go golfing. They had to go rent a car.
Call Murphy. Oh my God, call Murphy.
Call Murphy. No, he's out golfing.
I don't know. It's the middle of the night. He should be home.
Night golfing. Hey. But the rental car was another question I had. How did they get to the rental car agency?
Right?
If they needed a rental car, it's
come to
because they
them?
didn't have one. So how do you did they call a cab?
Did they take a bus? Because I'd really like to see them on a bus.
Yeah.
I could just imagine Steele like, I'm not sitting on that chair.
Yeah.
That chair looks filthy, Laura. I'm not sitting on there.
I would presume that they called a cab, but I always wondered about that. How did they get from point A to point B? And then, of course, they're in the rental car the next morning, and he says, "We're sleeping together. I must make a point to tell
We're
Murphy."
Finally sleeping together. I love that. I love how he's deliberately like, I got to tell her. And she says, "You
Poke
would."
the bear.
He says,
Poke
"Damn
the
right."
bear.
Yeah.
But then she does get, she gets serious. I mean, because obviously he said that in jest, and it was I need to give Murphy a bad time about this, and she kind of joked in response to his comment, but then she gets serious when she says, "It's not you, it's me. He's afraid I'll get in too deep and you'll be gone, and I'll be left." This reeks of her relationship with Wilson, Mr. White Belts, Mr. Bankers Do It with Interest T-shirts.
Oh, God, that's a terrible shirt.
But
I dump him on the basis of that shirt alone. I'm sorry. That would be just that. Would
obviously,
be the end of it.
you are not a child of the 80s, because those types of shirts, they were all over the place. I mean, just anything you could think of. They put it on a T-shirt, and Bankers Do It with Interest. There would have been something like, I can't think of them now, but I mean, they were all over the place. And just whatever you could imagine. And of course, some of them were even more risque than others, but yeah. And
I want a shirt that says, "Relax, Sheldon, you're only wearing a towel." Maybe I'll have that made. There's a T-shirt place in the mall where I live that makes shirts on demand. So maybe I'll have that made.
I just had a thought. Did Wilson buy the shirt for himself, or did Laura buy it for him?
I wondered that too. Was it like a gag gift, or was it something that his coworkers bought and thought it was funny?
Yeah, because
we'll never know. Because
neither one of them seemed the type to buy that kind of shirt and then wear it even.
Well, I guess maybe, and we learned this about Laura, that she was more impulsive when she was with him. So maybe it was maybe she did buy it, and
could be.
Maybe he was sort of appalled by it. Maybe that's why she kept it. I don't know.
Did he actually ever wear it?
There is the question. I wonder. When she says, this is another plausible deniability moment, when she kind of says what she thinks Murphy is protecting her from to Steele, he thinks, "I'll get in too deep, that you'll leave and I'll be in too deep." That's what he's worried about. And
yeah, that's right. She does frame it that way.
That she frames it as that way. And Steele, he processes it. He doesn't make her any promises. He sort of sits there, and then he asks to stretch his legs. She seems a little upset that she's revealed too much of herself, but I think that he's kind of realizing when she says that she is more interested than she's let on so far, and that he kind of realizes he's got to tread carefully, because it's not just a game for either one of them, that he's realizing that she's maybe more interested than she seemed at first.
So you think he sees through the framing?
I think he does, yeah. Because I think he saw through the framing of her not having a date. When she says she needs to call her date and cancel, or whatever it was earlier in the episode.
He didn't believe her.
He kind of, that little smirk on his face.
Yeah, he didn't believe her.
He didn't believe for a second that she had a social life. So he's now processing the fact that she lived with someone, that someone is gone, those clothes are still there, and she's commented that Murphy is afraid she'll get in too deep and he'll be gone. Someone else she's been with is already gone. So I think he's kind of putting all those pieces together, and he realizes he can't say, "Oh, well, I'll be here. Don't worry. I'm not going anywhere." He's not there yet. So he gets out, and she's upset because she's like, "Oh crap. I said too much." Now he knows.
In a weird kind of way, you may have just answered one of your previous questions about why did she hang on to those things? To remind herself not to get in too deep. I mean, it's kind of a weird psychological explanation, but it's
true.
You know, it's one of those things where some people do hang on to something as a reminder of their failures.
Yeah.
As kind of a warning to themselves. So maybe that's it.
No, you're right. It's probably exactly it. She opens that closet. She sees those T-shirts, those belts, whatever that he's left behind, and realizes if I'm not careful, this could happen again.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Eugene Price. What was he thinking? I mean,
the rainy season.
Yeah. Okay, I'm lying to you. I know you're lying to me. I know I'm lying to you. I know that you know that I know that you're lying to. You know, everybody knows everybody's lying. So why bother lying?
It's the CIA. It's probably just ingrained. I love right before they get there when he goes to phone them, and Sheldon says something like, "Wow, is he a man of action or what?" And Laura says, "I'm not sure. I have an answer for that question." And then he's got the phone and he's like, "I'd like the number for the Central Intelligence." No, it's not a residence. I thought that was really funny that he. And then when they get there and he's surprised that they've got a sign.
Yeah.
And she says, "Well, they're in the yellow pages. They're in the phone book. Why wouldn't they have the name on the lobby?" Like, she's not surprised at all, but he's sort of shocked because I think in his mind it's all skullduggery and spies and hiding from one another. So he's really kind of surprised that it's just a business. Like, you can call them, you can walk right into the lobby.
Mm-hmm.
Which
they're not hiding.
it's really cute, that whole bit.
Yeah. I mean, everybody knows that Evergreen Airways is a CIA operation, so it's not like they're hiding it.
And I think it's interesting that he just goes there because at this point, Sheldon has told them that the CIA are trying to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I think he feels, and I'm wondering if you got this, but when he goes and he makes that phone call, and Laura says, "Well, what are you doing?" And he says, "I'm not just going to stand by while that little man worships me like I'm Babe Ruth and whoever all rolled into one."
Mm-hmm.
He's the kind of guy that so far has basked in the hero worship. He enjoys being seen as this great character until it matters in a way that is, until it's real. And so he's visibly uncomfortable at the hero worship in Sheldon's eyes and feeling like a fraud. And then, of course, that scene that you pointed out where they go to see Eugene Price and they're both lying to each other. That's probably one of the best scenes in the whole episode because they're.
Yeah, I had that Steele's line as he's going to the phone booth written down, and I have it written here. He's really uncomfortable with the admiration, and you're right.
He really is.
And I think you're right. I didn't have an explanation for it, but I think you're right. He likes it when it's something that he is bringing on himself.
Yeah.
For perpetrating his con or whatever, but when it's real, when there's somebody's life at stake and he's feeling the pressure to save them and do something by being something he's not, and he knows he's not.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's
and he's looking to Laura for help because not that she's a CIA operative either, but she's had more experience working with this kind of thing. And so he doesn't know what to do and he's feeling panicked. And you're right. When it's real, it's scary. Mm-hmm. He likes the superficial admiration, but the stuff he doesn't have to earn. Mm-hmm. He has to earn this right now. And he doesn't know how. So showing up at the CIA is really his only option, which is quite funny because don't bull a bull artist. Is that what he says to him at first? Yeah. And then they get in the elevator. Yeah. Who's conning who?
And then, of course, after the bomb blows up, he goes back up and confronts Price. But boy, somebody should have did a fast install job on that because they weren't upstairs that long.
No, they really weren't. And it obviously couldn't have been put in any earlier than that or already would have exploded.
Yeah. So what took Charlie Webb so long to get there to try to defuse it?
Good question.
Was he sleeping on the job?
Or did he just happen by?
Oh, I suppose. Yeah, he could have.
Yeah. Like maybe he just walked by and he saw somebody tinkering with the car.
Except that how would he have known that they were in that car? Because it was a rental. It had absolutely no connection.
That's true.
To Sheldon. So he must have
they
seen
might have been
something.
watching him.
Well, yeah, except that if they were watching him and they saw somebody tinkering with the car, wouldn't you have gone over and tried to stop them?
Doesn't make any sense.
So, yeah, after he goes back up and he confronts Price about don't bull a bull artist, and Price says, well, looks like Sheldon's running a little operation on the side. Sheldon disappears and he heads to what has got to
his
be
wedding.
The worst wedding. Maybe not the worst wedding ever, but it's got to be one of the worst weddings ever. I mean, what did they started the wedding march 4 times before they finally got it?
Yeah. And he's hiding behind the trellis. They know he's there.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's gone to say, hey, we need to start this thing. Let's get going. They just sort of leave him to cower there.
Yeah.
And Steele, I have a couple questions about how he got there so fast in a tux like that. Did he just have that hanging around? Was that something that was, did he go and buy it? The color scheme was literally, it matched the wedding. The only difference was the tie. So how did he know what the color, granted suits aren't maybe all that complex, but still charcoal gray, those colors. Where did he find that at such short notice? I would like to know.
The Steele luck.
Yeah, he fit the suit.
Yes. Oh, and the glasses. Where did he get the glasses? Hi, Simon Courtney, Sheldon's best man. Where did he get the glasses? I mean, he looked good in them, but where did he get them? Does
he just grabbed those in the drugstore? They were like reading glasses.
Well, except that I suppose they could have been a really, really light powered reading glass, because he didn't show any signs of having trouble walking while he was wearing them, although he did pull them down a couple of times. So maybe they were. But that wedding is a disaster. And then, of course, Laura comes chasing the blonde out of the house, and the father pulls a gun and starts threatening everybody, and then the fight, and then he lands right in the middle of the cake. Oh, what a horrible wedding.
Yeah, it really was a mess.
The only good thing about it is probably the only real memory that they're going to have of it is the videotape. Because I don't know how it is for you, and maybe it's a combination of both my age and my fading memory and just a number of other factors, but I don't really have any or much direct memory of my own wedding day because there was so much happening and so much, I don't want to say pressure, but just all this stuff that was going on, and the mind going 100 miles an hour, you're just not observing it. And so there's the videotape, and it's like, okay, I know this all happened, but it's literally like watching a TV show of your own wedding, that's been recreated in a TV show or something.
I don't have a videotape. I like to joke that we got married to get him in the country because he was living in Scotland, and it was easier to get a spousal visa for him to come here than anything else. So our wedding was very quick. It was a city hall wedding in Scotland. We had dinner at a restaurant across the street, and then we rented a pub for the evening, and that was kind of it. Like, it was very low key, very cheap. And what I do remember was being, like you said, being busy. Everybody wanting to come and say hello, having to go through all the introductions to people that I'd never met, because they were all his extended family, all in Scotland. The only people that came were my parents and like 3 friends of mine. That was it. So it was very much just, here, have you met this person? Have you met this person? Have you met this person? And then, of course, the saying goodbye to everybody, et cetera, et cetera. What I do know, and I joked to my husband about this, is that I like to say, it was the worst day of your life, but it's okay. You got through it, because he's an introvert. He hates being the center of attention. So standing up there in front of people was like the worst. Like, I was like, okay, just get through it.
I feel for him, because I'm very much like that too. But you do realize, of course, that the Canadian authorities are listening to this, and they have just heard you admit to marriage fraud.
It's not fraud. We're still married.
What's the legal requirement up there to not be fraud? How many years?
I mean, 5 years he'd have to be. He's been here 13. He's good. We're good.
Okay.
The relationship was legit. We just, we weren't sure we were going to get married as quickly as we did.
Okay.
But because it was, so it's okay, Canadian government. CSIS, I know you're listening. That's our version of the CIA, CSIS. People don't realize we actually have a secret service. Ours is pretty secret.
It's a secret.
They don't even... Yeah, sorry.
now you're in trouble for spilling the secret. Okay, after the wedding, they're back at the office, and Laura's back over the filing cabinet, going through more papers, and Murphy shows up. And I know he thinks he's being helpful, but it doesn't seem like he really is. And it's almost like I don't want to say she's laughing at him, but she finds his efforts to help her and guide her and impart wisdom to her as kind of humorous. It seems like she's kind of suppressing a smile about.
Yeah, I don't like Murphy in this scene. This scene, I want to give him kind of a smack upside the head, because he does come in like Mr. I know what's best for you. And that sort of attitude I find very off-putting, and I don't enjoy it. So he comes in and he's like, you need to get out. You need to do this. I'm sorry I was so hard on you, but it's out of love or whatever.
I think part of it's the way he says it, because if he had said it differently with more of a tone of concern, I think it would have gone over better. But, I think also he's trying to keep it so that he's not too serious, because he's afraid of being too serious, because then Laura might get the clue and that'll ruin everything, because maybe she doesn't feel that way about me, and all that whole thing. But then she kisses him on the cheek, and I realize that was totally innocent on her part, but I don't think he necessarily saw it that way.
No, and I agree with your assessment that she's sort of not laughing at him in a malicious way, but somewhat amused by the fact that it's kind of this inside joke that he's just not aware of. You should get out more. And of course, she's just had this big adventure with the CIA.
And in a sense, it is at his expense.
Yeah. I don't think it's just meant to be cruel, though. I think it's just meant as a if only he knew kind of thing. And then she kisses him. And you're right. I think he does take that very differently. She sees him as a loyal brother figure, somebody she can count on, someone she can rely on, somebody who is, and again, if she's coming off of a failed relationship, maybe someone that is safe, because he's not a romantic partner. He's not somebody that has, up to this point, expressed interest romantically. So she doesn't have to worry that he's going to leave her. He's going to hurt her. He's just always kind of there, which is maybe taking him for granted a little bit. But she's also not aware of his feelings because he hasn't made them clear. So it kind of goes both ways. And you feel for Murphy a little bit when she kisses him, because he obviously is thinking, oh my gosh, she kissed me. Yay. But definitely not on her part meant as anything other than you're sweet. Here's a kiss on the cheek.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel sorry for Murphy. I
vacillate. Sometimes I feel sorry for him, and sometimes I want to hit him. But I've had those friendships that turned out to not be friendships on the other side of things, where I've seen them as a friend, and then it turned out that they see things differently, and that's fine. It happens, but a lot of the time you lose a friend in that process.
Well, it's tough on the other side of that equation.
Yeah, and it's tough too for to bare your feelings to somebody and then have them not reciprocate. That also sucks.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it sucks on both sides, and it's never a fun situation. But
anything we didn't touch on that you want to discuss?
No, I think that, I got the Goldfinger reference in, so that was was my it was down here at the bottom that was the not explicitly mentioned. He doesn't give the whole Goldfinger, Sean Connery, Honor Blackman. Right. But he definitely references it, so it should probably.
I think they're still finding their way with that.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah.
They've played with it. They're definitely throwing in explicit movie references,
Oh, for sure.
But they haven't settled in firmly on that.
Yeah. I mean, they built structure. An entire episode around North by Northwest.
Yeah.
Which was, I mean, I loved it. And I want to say, like, this probably was one of my favorite episodes of season 1. And it's funny because I don't often think of it outright when I go back to watch season 1. This one doesn't always like ping in my memory as like a really good episode. But when I do rewatch it, I remember all the scenes, you know, Sheldon recounting seeing his usher blown up, or the scene between Steele and Sheldon where they sort of express their inner wishes to be different. And I think this is really good. This is a really good episode. Why don't I have this in my list of favorites? And then, you know, I keep watching. I don't know if it's because it's so early in the series that I maybe sometimes forget about it, but it's a really good one.
It is. And, you know, there's a lot of good episodes in season 1, but I think season 1 was cursed with an amazing episode that eclipsed everything else. Now, not to say that everything else in that first season was, you know, lesser in terms of, you know, it fell below the bar as to good quality, because I think most of the season 1 episodes were well above the good quality bar. But Vintage Steele just kind of destroyed.
I had a feeling that was
1.
What you were thinking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that is...
Well, that and Thou Shalt Not Steal. I think that's another one that kind of...
Yeah.
I don't know if it destroys season 1, but it's one that has so many good things going for it that you kind of forget that there's a lot of other really good episodes like you said, in the season. But Vintage Steele is 100%, I agree, that probably the best episode of that season.
Well, I remember when the videotapes, there were, I think I'd mentioned this before, that there are 2 sets of videotapes that were released of the series. And one of them was really nice, clamshell cover with a nice cover on it. And it had, I think, 2 episodes per tape. And then there was a smaller series that had the multicolor paper sleeve boxes that it slipped in, and each one was just an episode or 2 as well. And I know that I didn't discover those until after they had been released and then discontinued. And Vintage Steele was the one that was always the most expensive to try and get. And I think it was because there was so many people that wanted that particular one. So I think there's a lot of fans who look at Vintage Steele as kind of the high point of season 1. And unfortunately, it does tend to eclipse the rest of the episodes because it was so much higher than the rest, which is not meant to denigrate the rest of the episodes in that season, because they were still really good.
Yeah, this one is really good. It has a lot of excellent moments, character development, a lot of stuff between Steele and Laura. We learn a lot about Laura, really good acting, and, you know, some really good comedy. I mean, I highlighted some of the lines there. This is one of the most quotable episodes. Yeah. You know, I'd ask you to take a seat, but you've already helped yourself to some furniture. His towel line, the line on about the seat. You know, it's not a residence, or, you know, is he amazing or what? I don't have an answer for that question. You know, it's got some really good one-liners the whole way through. So I think this was definitely one that really. I think this is where they're finally starting to find their feet as a show, where the first 3 are good, but they're not really sure what they have, and they're not really sure what to do with him as a character. So for them, maybe that's why it felt a little strange, because she wasn't trying to get rid of him when Sheldon first shows up. She's not calling Murphy for help and sort of fobbing him off and telling him to go home. She's going with him on this journey. And up until this point, that hasn't been the case, because I think the writers have been thinking, okay, he's just here as a funny joke. He's here as their foil, or whatever you want to call it, but he's not going to really be a big part of the story. And then they start to realize, oh, when we make him part of the story, it's good.
Yeah.
But then, of course, they don't know what to do with Murphy. So,
yeah. All right. Well, I guess let's call it an episode. And
I think it is an episode.
Yes. And I'm going to say right here and now, to anybody listening to this, if we did not re-record this, I apologize for the audio errors in it. Purely my fault. I got stupid. But
we've got that on record.
I can always edit it out.
That's true.
But thank you for putting up with my mistakes and the questionable quality that this is going to have when we get done with it. But we appreciate you sticking around. If you'd like to follow us, check out the show notes, the resources that we've referenced, such as the Amazon movie links. You can find that all at the official website, which is I almost did it again. www.SteeleWatching.com. And like I said, you can find all those things there. You can find the link to allow you to subscribe or follow in your favorite pod app, and just click it and it'll do it for you. So that's all there. You want to talk about the Facebook and the Twitter and the Instagram?
Yeah. So make sure you have a look at our Twitter, SteeleWatching, our Facebook and Instagram. We will be posting information about upcoming episodes. We'll post sound bites. I might put up a couple of fun images, things like that, as well as the Facebook page, the Steele Watchers Facebook page, where, it's not officially connected to this podcast, but that is how we met as hosts. And there are tons of really amazing fans in that group, and lots of discussion going on there, lots of posts, lots of fun stuff. And it's sort of been the impetus for the rest of this. So very much worth joining and participating in on, and just paying attention to all the other stuff for updates.
And I haven't been paying real close attention because I'm not really all that much of a social media person myself, but I believe Judith may have kind of slowed down her participation in the group. But Judith Moose, the author of the Steele Loved After All These Years book that we're using as a reference, she has frequented the group in the past. So there's an opportunity for you to possibly follow some of the things that she has to say about her book or about Remington Steele or whatnot.
Yeah, that's how I got my copy, was through her. She had done a reprint, and it was limited. It was last year, so there was only so many copies, and it was, offered to Steele Watchers who paid for it. So
I must have missed that.
It's not. Yeah, it's not currently in print. The book, you can buy, as you said, the PDF copies, or you can find it, but it's usually on eBay or something, going for much more money on eBay or those sites. But she offered a limited print for some of us, and that's how I got mine, because I had missed it the first time around. So it was, I think, $75. It was worth it, I would say, as a collector's item. But she is in the Facebook group. She's maybe not as active as you are, not as active, but she is there. So if you join and I don't know, tag her, maybe she'll answer and give information as to whether or not there's more copies of the book coming out, or another limited run maybe next Christmas. Who knows? I'm
afraid to admit that I have 2 copies of the original pressing.
Oh, do you?
Yes.
That's awesome. No, that's amazing.
I'm paranoid that way. I've got to have my real copy, my using copy, and then a backup.
I usually have, if it's a book I really love, I have a lending copy too. I lend to people.
I don't like to lend.
Well, see, I have my copies that I keep, but then I'll buy if I see them at a used bookstore or something, I'll buy a copy. Okay. And that's my lending copy, because if it never comes back to me, it was like $2 at the used bookstore, so I don't worry about it.
Okay. Fair enough.
But this one, I don't have a lending copy, obviously, because there's only the one. So no one's getting it. You can come over and look at it, but you can't take it home.
But you have to wear gloves.
Exactly. Treat it very, very kindly.
Okay. The next episode is Thou Shalt Not Steal, which you mentioned earlier.
I already mentioned it. I led into it.
Yeah. So looking forward to it.
Me too.
All right. Hey, thanks for joining us, and we're going to say goodbye.